Well, hello everybody, and welcome to a half term. It is half term for you as well, isn't it,
Mhm.
Kirstin?
Yep.
Episode of Spines and Headlines. This is episode 6, I think. How exciting!
Yeah. We've done this for over a month. Amazing.
Ooh. So, if you're new to us, my name is Emma Rosen, and I am a children's and non-fiction author. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Kirstin McNeil and I am a children's picture book author and publisher.
Exciting stuff. Well, we've got lots for you today. We always start this podcast with a word of the week that summarises our publishing and writing week. Did you want to go first, Kirstin, or shall I?
I will, because mine's short and I know that yours it might be quite exciting. So my word of the week from last week is local. I kept everything local last week, going to my local bookstores, going to the library, and also I am booked, I think, for a World Book Day, and that is with one of the local schools in my area. They actually reached out to me. I've worked with them before, and it was just nice to remind yourself that staying local is cool and is a really great way to be connected in with what you do. So that's my word of the week. What's yours?
That's lovely. Community is important, short but sweet. My word is inspiring because
Oh,
I don't know, I had an exciting evening last night in London. I left the countryside, went to the scary Big Smoke, and we went to see the Queen herself, Dame Jacqueline Wilson, last night, which I know, I know,
I'm so
so
jealous.
exciting. So I booked at the South Bank Centre to go and see Jacqueline Wilson. I mean, obviously, she was around when we were little and was
Mm.
an absolute legend then. But my middle daughter went through a big Jacqueline Wilson phase, and my younger daughter is just discovering her, which is because middle child, she's my oldest daughter, she passed Tracy Beaker on to little ones.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
read Tracy Beaker and she really liked it. And then I saw this event, and this is celebrating the the sleepovers series. So I got hold, no, sorry, my daughter had a copy of Sleepovers. So we read that and we got the other two in the series. And the thing for me, I've definitely said on my channel before that my youngest, I wouldn't say she's a reluctant reader. I think she sometimes lacks confidence. I
Mm.
think she sits in series or genres that she feels very comfortable with. And she likes an easy book, a predictable book. And so finding something new for her to dive into is really lovely. And obviously, Jacqueline Wilson, although she always writes about a little girl who's usually about 10, outside of that, there's this huge range and introducing all sorts of issues and real life things. And so it's nice to introduce her to something new, but also, as we know as authors, when young people go to author events, and that could be a local author like you or I, or it could be the living legend Jacqueline Wilson or whoever, it's such an inspiration. So what they did at the event is Jacqueline Wilson talked about the book, and then she brought the illustrator on. So she works with a new illustrator called Rachel Dean.
Oh, nice. Because it was
And
always Nick Sharratt when we were growing
yes,
up, wasn't it?
yes, so he's doing his own thing now.
Mm.
There's a lot of
Also
rumor
very
that they've
lovely.
broken up. Yeah, yeah. So she's moved on, and oh my goodness, a story that was told. Sorry to go on a tangent. The new illustrator, Rachel Dean, said that when she was a child, she did a talk at her school about her inspiration, which was Jacqueline Wilson and Nick Sharratt, and that she one day
Oh my
wanted to be
God.
like them. I know, and my mummy easily emotional. I
Oh
was
my God.
like,
How a full circle for her as well. That's
unreal,
amazing.
absolutely
That's
unreal. So
incredible.
she did a draw along, which was so
Oh
sweet,
yeah. We love a draw
and
along.
yeah, and I watched my little one read the book on the train on the way there and on the way back. And when they'd finished the draw along, sit and have a go at drawing the other characters and talk about how she's going to try drawing the others. And that is why author events matter so much, because it just brings that bit of inspiration, that bit of it's real life, um, and it makes such a difference. And I think we're very quick to take children to like music events,
Mm,
theatre, cinema, and those are all wonderful. But I think we forget that book events are so important. I mean, I exposed my youngest to um, the idea of achieving your dreams
mm,
and the idea of a career as a creative and an author and an illustrator and all these things, and you don't know what little seeds get planted in something like that. So anybody watching this who hasn't thought to look at events that maybe their local bookshop is doing, this thing at the South Bank Centre was part of a festival that they were running called Imagine. So look
mm.
at like festivals, look at the big authors. So I specifically have been looking for Jacqueline Wilson coming locally. But so if you've got a particular favorite, you might like to have a look, but definitely hugely recommend looking for a book event for your little ones.
And we will talk more about that next week because I've got a lot to say about festivals, book festivals. There's quite a lot of things coming up in the pipeline for spring and summer, which is really exciting. Um, just you said inspiration. A lot of what you were talking about was inspiration for your daughter. Did you find inspiration for yourself in this event, Emma?
Yeah, I think I my one of my daughters said to me, oh, like something like, do you wish you were at that level, I can't remember how she phrased it.
Do you wish you were that good, that famous?
I and I was like, I fully accept that I'm not and won't be, because she's insanely good, and I'm okay with that. So I wasn't looking at it going like, I want to be there. I was just sort of looking at it and seeing the power of it,
Mm.
and knowing that in some way that's also what we do, and also stealing some ideas for how I could present when I have to do
Oh yeah, I love
author
that. I love
events.
going to author events to see how other authors do it because
Yeah.
it's fascinating and you learn something new every time. And I also think that Jacqueline Wilson, and I love the fact that you're not on Jacqueline first time basis yet. She's still Jacqueline Wilson. It's
Oh yeah.
great. Jacqueline,
Same.
Jacqueline Wilson would not have thought that either. She probably for many many years was even when she was at the height of when we were growing up would have been like, yeah, I'm still an author and just doing my thing. Um, I got to say, what you said about her books and that, they often centered a um, 10-year-old white girl. Um, but what they did was they were a window. It was like that comfortability of like having the character being sort of very similar to many, many people but then having lots and lots of experiences to that character and tangential to that character that you would not have encountered. I think Jacqueline Wilson books, um, reading those made me, you know, understand that some people had came from the care system and understand that some people lived in two different houses and their parents
Mhm.
split up and you know really understood the impact on children of poverty and the impact of children on things like bullying, psychological bullying, and like really different family setups. And that was the first time that I would, I encountered that as a young child, and it was done in such a way that it wasn't. It was obviously there were scary bits, but it wasn't something that I would shy from. I wanted to know more, and that's the the most beautiful thing about her books
Mhm.
is that she was able to do it in a way that made people more curious.
Yeah, she's so talented. And the Sleepover series, which was what was being celebrated,
Mm,
it is just about a group of friends who have sleepovers. That's it. But it looks at bullying, pressure at school, and the main character, Daisy, her sister. is disabled, so she can't walk. In the first book, she can't communicate at all, although
Mm.
Daisy understands her. And then she learns Makaton and goes to a special school. So again, it's introducing people to somebody might have a disabled family member, and they
Mm.
have an uncle called Uncle Gary who's a drag queen, and Uncle Gary's brilliant. So again, it's just, oh look, this could happen or that could happen. And they were talking about the original book was published 20 something years ago, and that was illustrated by Nick Sharratt, or Sharratt, or however you say his surname. And then Rachel Dean has taken it on, and Jacqueline Wilson, Queen Lady, she was saying about how it's like if you were drawn by all of your friends, they're still drawing you, but they're drawing it in different ways, and that's how she feels
Mm.
about having a new illustrator. It's still the same person they're drawing.
Mm.
um so yeah, it was lovely, and talking about like reinvigorating a character from years and years ago, and she brought in aspects of other books. It was just lovely, and there were people there with kids of all ages, and there were adults there on their own, obviously big fans who wanted to
Mm.
see her. And you could pay super duper money and have a sleepover as well. So it was,
Wow.
I know, amazing, but yeah, really, really cool. So yeah, we will talk a bit more about author events and festivals and things. We always, in these podcasts, the aim is to talk about things that are in the news, or very current, and we try to keep our fingers on the pulse. So this week we're going to be talking about bookshop.org and Spotify, and then we'll move on a little bit to talk about AI, which is always in the
Mm.
news. So very briefly, the news about Bookshop and Spotify. So Spotify, as far as I understand it, have various things whereby if you are listening to an audiobook, you can also buy the ebook through partnerships that they have. And they have also now partnered with bookshop.org to be able for you to just click through and buy the physical book. And in essence, you think, fantastic, listening to an audiobook, we're selling books, and so on. The whole aim of bookshop.org is that they are very ethical. They support bookshops, independent bookshops. A percentage of their income goes to independent bookshops. You can even, when you purchase, select an independent bookshop of your choice. They are a bit of a protest against Amazon as being an
Yeah.
alternative and a big online platform. That's what they stand for. Now, personally, I'm getting really fed up with billionaires who own companies that I really like. Like, I use Spotify all the time.
Yeah.
Amazon, we've talked about before, they have their own issues. Spotify is owned, or their founder is Daniel Ek, who has invested in AI, war stuff. I'm
Technology.
not very good at war words. Technology is a better word than stuff. Thank you.
Conflict
Uh,
technology.
yeah, not very nice things. So, when you're paying your money for your Spotify subscription, or they're getting their percentage from your click through to bookshop.org, I know it's only pennies, but that is going in his pocket and then being invested into not very nice places. And it's so
Yeah,
frustrating when you think,
Spotify
well,
is on the boycott list, isn't it? So
yeah,
there's a clear linkage to where your Spotify money is going, and it's been on the boycott list, I think, for a few months, at least 6 months now.
yeah, which I kind of missed until this bookshop thing happened.
Same.
So I've been like a loyal Spotify customer for ages. I like listening to my podcast there. And so I've become aware of this because people have said, well, what's this dichotomy here? This very ethical company partnering with a questionable company and making this ickiness. It's like, it's very similar to, I use products made by Wild, which are an ethical like deodorant and cosmetics
Mm.
company, and they were bought by
Bought by,
Unilever.
yeah.
So then you look at this thing that you go, oh, this is great. I want to support this. I feel good supporting this. And then you go, oh, why have you done this now? And now I've got to think about how I feel about it, which is hard. And it's
I think,
another.
yeah,
Mm,
I think we let, let's talk about trends and on what this means for the wider publishing industry, and then a bit about how this impacts authors, how this might impact individuals, some things that individuals might not know. Um, the trend thing, I think it's very interesting that a big company like Spotify, that is a subscription based, from the beginning has been subscription based model, was not a but by the digital version of this, it was always a subscription based model. Has now pivoted and has added a physical product to their suite, and it's not music, it is books. So I think there's a lot to say in terms of, they added the audiobooks a couple of years ago to the Spotify. They're big into podcasts. They're big into the audiobooks now. They've obviously got lots of data to show that this is a big part of their market, of their listening market. Um, and then the trend that especially the younger generations, and possibly the older generations as well, has never really fully gone all into the streaming, the subscription model. And there is a swing back to owning physical products. There's definitely been that swing since AI started ramping up. People have noticed how their favorite how their favorite movies are no longer available on a certain platform, and then they have to switch to different platforms, so that they're just buying that movie. But secondly, because of all of this um, controversy around Spotify, a lot of artists are removing their catalogue from Spotify completely. So there is more of a shift towards physical products being bought. And it's interesting that Spotify have decided that that is in books and not in CDs, for example, or records. So will we see them testing this out with books and then going, hey, you can buy your record on this as well? I mean, the more obvious route is you're listening to Taylor Swift, and then here's a link to buy her record, physical record or physical CD or whatever. They haven't gone down that route first, and as far as I know, you can't do that in Spotify. They've gone down the books route first, which has been really interesting as trend. Maybe there's more money in books than in physical than physical records. Maybe it's more sinister. Maybe it's more around data. At the end of the day, this is all about data. This is always all about data. So that's a really interesting trend. What's your view on that, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, because I would have thought the natural thing would have been to partner with Amazon, to be honest. But
Mm,
maybe Daniel Ek doesn't like Jeff Bezos or something. Who knows? Um, I agree. It's weird. I'm actually watching a series at the moment with my husband called The Playlist, which is about
mm,
Daniel Ek, and it's really interesting looking at how he set up the company in response to Pirate Bay and the arguments with Pirate Bay where they were stealing uh, music, and the idea was, well, we can monetize and make it legal so people can stream. Spotify was this groundbreaking platform where instead of getting these slightly questionable downloads, you could just stream and the artists were being paid. So,
mm,
but yeah, unfortunately, it's this whole thing around like globalization and around monopolization. This is one of the things with Amazon, and there's been questions about Amazon having KDP, a self-publishing arm, and them owning so many different things, because you get one individual who has so much money and power, and it takes away from the small businesses. And I think all you can do really, personally, is to support local, as we said earlier. um, try and buy direct and try and make choices about the companies that you're using. But I mean, what's the alternative to Spotify? I suppose things like
mm.
Podbean and
There are some alternatives, which is really, it is interesting that because of people's conscience, they are branching out. And it's interesting that because of boycott lists, people are starting to utilize different platforms, which is super, super interesting.
Mm.
I would also say that a lot of the questions are around, why did Bookshop.org
Yeah.
agree to this partnership? Are they in trouble? Is there an issue like with their longevity? Is this a longer strategy that we're not aware of? Uh, there is a lot of fluctuation in the market when it
Mm.
comes to publishing, and there is a need to diversify. So maybe this is something that Bookshop have to do in order to keep doing the ethical things that they're doing.
Yeah.
But it is a weird partnership. It's making a lot
Yes.
of people feel icky and uncomfortable. So any thoughts from anybody, that would be great, because I'm still
Mm.
trying to get my head around it myself.
Yeah, I mean, when you're an ethical brand, like if well, I try and run an ethical brand, but I'm not brand. Like
Mm,
me and my 7 books are making a difference. But when you run an ethical brand, surely if you're being bought by somebody or you're entering a partnership with somebody, their ethics is something that would be very important to your decision making, you would think. So,
mm.
and then obviously your customers are choosing you because of your ethics. If you make so much noise about it, it just, yeah, it's very strange. I suppose we'll see how it develops, and as you say, we'd love people's thoughts and comments on this news this week.
And
The other
speaking of
thing,
ethical,
yeah, well, you sent me, was it on Instagram? I literally sent it to you, what,
probably.
half an hour ago, and I've immediately forgotten. Um,
I think so. I sent you, me and Emma, we communicate across Instagram thing, and there was an exact same video with the exact same desk and the calculator and everything, but the person was AI generated, and it had her same reaction, and she was like, holy crap, I am being my content is now being taken and like being completely changed without my consent, and is being shown on the internet. And basically, that's how authors and illustrators have been feeling for the last year, because what's been happening in the industry is that a big company has stolen everybody's books. This is actually what's happened: stolen everybody's books, and taken that, put that in an algorithm to train AI on how to write, to not just how to tell a story, but how to write. And that company was acquired by Meta, and Meta used that company. And ironically, we're talking on Instagram with this, as I do understand the irony of this. But a Meta used that, is using that to generate things and to train the AI, and lots of other companies are using that. And I just thought it was a really, really good example of how authors feel and how illustrators feel about AI generated books and AI generated content. It literally feels like your identity has been stolen and has
mm.
been shared without your consent. And so I wanted to talk about AI generated books and what that means for authors and illustrators, because it needs to be discussed. And we haven't discussed this on the podcast yet.
Yeah, and it's a huge topic. And I mean, I've come across it in a very small way. I once had an email from somebody asking if I mean, it was like spam, but asking if I wanted them to rewrite my book, Lily the Limpet Gets Lost, and they had sent a new version, and somehow they had got hold of the text of the book, and it'd been run through AI. It was so bizarre. And I've also
Wow.
had, I know, I had a scammy publishing company who had used AI to generate a bio about me and was listing me as somebody they stood behind, or making out that I worked
I remember
with them
that.
in some way. Yeah, they still exist. I didn't manage to take them down. I tried. Uh, so occasionally you can come across like your personal work, but obviously, as you're saying, Kirstin, it can also be that you are being used to train these
Mm,
algorithms. Also, what we're seeing is within the indie space is indie authors in picture books. going, well, I don't have to work with an illustrator. I
Oh,
can
yeah,
just pop my book in whatever. There's some lovely images, and they're getting so good now. In the old days, they always look questionable.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
really good, and they've been trained with real illustrators and
yeah,
artists' work. You know, you and I work with artists who we pay for their
yeah.
time and we acknowledge, and their name is on the front cover. And I get it, it's expensive publishing a book. It's really hard to have the cash flow for that. You might be using your own savings, you might be
Mm,
doing a Kickstarter, you might be lucky enough to have some kind of corporate sponsorship or something, but it's hard. And when you're looking at cutting corners, you might go, oh, well, I could use some AI generated art. What's the problem? Well, you've literally stolen artists' work. There's an
mm,
environmental consequence. You are taking work away from artists when it's hard enough trying to work as a creative small business. And it's, you know, Rhiannon Thomas, who I work with mostly, we are like Jacqueline Wilson and Nick Sherratt / Rachel Dean. We are like the team. Uh, and, you know, she's been making lots of noise about it. And that when people are doing things like, oh, I'll just make a fun little picture of myself, and you pop all your data into
mm.
the AI, and oh, these are all the facts about me, and here's a picture of me. Ha ha ha. Now I've got a fun picture I can post on social media. And now the AI has all of your information and your image, and has used huge amounts of water to generate that, and will use your image and your data to steal other people's jobs, basically. It's the hard thing
Yeah,
is, sorry, go ahead.
there's a fine line, isn't there? Because, well, there's a big hard line for me, but for you explained it really, really well there, Emma, that, as someone who doesn't have much money and they want to create something, and they have the words, and they're like, why don't I generate? Well, then why doesn't someone who doesn't have the words generate the words? If you're generating the images, then what's stopping someone from just skipping out the author piece altogether and generating their own books? And the problem with all of this, in addition to the fact that you're not supporting artists, you're not supporting real people, there's a massive environmental impact on this negatively. I just want to remind everybody of a quote that I read in George Orwell's 1984. And it was something that I literally read it. I read this book a couple of months ago, right at the beginning of the year, and I hadn't read it since I was about 16, 17 years old. And when I read it when I was 16, I thought, oh, it's a good job we don't live in that world. And now that I'm reading it now, there's so many quotes in it that are real. They're really real. And this book was written in the 50s, or the 40s. And one of the quotes is, um, the children don't even read anything other than what robots have written. Everything that they read, everything that they sing has been created for them by the technology. And this is this is the problem, right? Is that if this is being created through an algorithm, then it's devoid of all of the things that make us human. And you could argue as until you're blue in the face, it's still not creative. It's still not, it's stealing from other people's creativity, and it's spitting it out in a way in which that it basically thinks that you would like it. Um and and I just feel that there's something really, really uncomfortable, especially for children's books. Children's
Yeah.
books are so important and so sacred that even if the pictures are consistent and look like they've been drawn, it's why spend the effort, why spend that energy on doing that when AI can be used for many other things? And when we're talking about AI, we're talking about AI generated images and AI generated text for children's books. We're not talking about AI analysis of chest scan to identify cancer in the lungs. Like AI has it's like talking about um, exercise. You can talk about it in different ways, right? So we are specifically talking about the way in which AI is being used for the generation of children's books. And then how this is impacting indie authors is that because there's no restrictions at all on this, there isn't really any discouragement. And because indie authors, the majority of indie authors, do have a different market than traditionally published authors, some indie authors don't want to be put into Waterstones and have, hardbacks and physical books to send out. A lot of authors who are independent or self-published, they are fine having, everything done digitally and print on demand and everything, and there is a market for that. The problem is that market currently does not discourage from generating things through AI. In fact, I think in some areas it is encouraged. Like people are generating it and sharing it and saying, look how much money I'm making, look how easy this is, look how incredibly, quickly I can create a children's book and then make money from it and generate it and sort of sell loads of copies. That unfortunately that is negatively impacting the indie publishing world a lot faster and a lot more than the traditional published world. I think in traditional publishing, you've got agents and publishers that are going, you have to prove that you didn't use AI on this and are currently protecting their creatives. But in the indie world, there's nothing stopping people. I mean, even just one more thing. All of the awards that we've submitted submissions for, did any of them say anything about AI generated things? Did any of them ask, say in the terms and conditions, no AI generated content? Can you tick the box to say you have not used AI generated content? I haven't seen any of that. And so even with like the way in which submissions are being written, you've got to have something in that, right? Because there's literally no barriers right now. There's nothing stopping someone from doing it in the indie market, and that is that we're going to see more and more saturation of this part of the world, of this industry, of AI generated books, and that's a big problem.
And people will lie. And as indies, we're also already tarred with this brush of, what happened when ebooks first came out and people would just put in, unedited, whatever content onto the internet, much as I think that drives creativity. But, it's, as a customer, I think, to think about it from that point of view, do I want to spend my money that I've worked hard for on buying a book that was made by a computer? Not particularly. And, going back to what I was saying about Jacqueline Wilson, do I want to sit? I'd sit there and talk to an AI instead. Instead, I sat there and listened to a woman who's been writing over 100 books, talking about how she did that and sort of being amazed by her brain and what she stands for. If there was AI in that, it's just where's the inspiration? Who cares? Why does it matter? I do think there is a space and an argument for AI in, for example, book research. So you can, if you so wanted, use AI to help you find, let's say, journal articles, if you were writing something where that was appropriate, perhaps, or using it. I mean, we do all use it to an extent in grammar checkers and things like that. So there is a little element in there. I do think it's interesting sometimes where artists are purposefully working with AI in a creative way. So they are saying what we're doing is feeding prompts in, this is what we did, this is what came out, and they're using that literally to make art based around this relationship between AI and humans. I think that's interesting. So I think there's a space for it if it's declared 100% that
Yeah.
yes, I do use AI. And being honest, I use it. Sorry, that's not me saying I use it. That's saying
Be honest.
hypothetically saying I use it. Be honest, and that I think using it in a creative way is interesting, and there's a space for using that to think about what we think about AI and what that relationship is. I think that but not for taking the place of human creatives or stealing their work. If as a creative I was really into AI and wanted to feed my work into it by choice, fine. I should
Yeah.
be able to declare, yeah, I'm all right with that. I like AI.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's plenty of creatives who are fine with it, and that's okay. But we can't opt out. And our
Yeah.
work has been stolen. And more to the point, it took me a long time to write my books.
Yeah.
If you're going to use it, you have to pay me because it's my work that I own. And I am signed up to things like the ALCS, which is the Authors Licensing Collection Service. So if you're going to use it to train your data, then you need to pay me some commission for that. So I think maybe in the future, if there's legislation around your choice for your work to be used, your declaration of you using it, some kind of actual check that works so you can't just lie,
Mm.
maybe there's a space for it. But as it
There's
stands,
currently no restrictions. There's
yeah,
no guidelines. There's no restrictions.
no.
There is something on Amazon that now you have to declare whether you used AI or not in the making of your book. But I highly doubt there is any checks. How did he check millions
Yeah,
of books being uploaded every month? I don't know. And then there's a question around, well, if I used AI for grammar check, do I have to declare that this book was created with the help of AI? Or,
hmm,
what's the difference between using AI to help, analyze a plot versus using AI to generate the illustrators, the illustrations and replace an illustrator? There are no guidelines currently on the use of it. It is literally just binary. Did you use it or did you not use it?
hmm,
Which I don't think is helpful either. Um,
no,
and yeah, it is something that, um, quite honestly, is preventing me from having an Amazon strategy for my books, because I don't know where this is going. I don't know where, what the landscape is going to look like in the next couple of months in terms of books on the internet. And if I upload my books, where is that going? What's that information? Where is that information leading to?
mm,
And so for me, I'm kind of slightly stalled in terms of trying to scale my business, because one of the only places to scale is Amazon. So yeah, it's a really, really
yeah.
complex subject. But we are really feeling the pain in terms of people who are trying to do what's right and trying to keep, um, an authenticity with their books. And it
Yeah.
seems like everybody's using AI. It seems like everybody's doing it.
I sort of feel at the moment with lots of things like I can't win. Like,
Mm,
well, like, I do use Amazon. I'm always moaning about it, but I do use Amazon. And my children's books are on Kindle Unlimited. And I do use Spotify. And I do buy books from Amazon here and there. And I probably take a position of I try to, for example, support local where I can, and I use my voice to say what I think about these things. But I'm very aware that I'm hypocritical in that I feel I need to use these platforms for my business, even though ethically I might have questions, because otherwise I can't run my business.
mm,
And that's horrible. Or, for example, in my own life, well, Spotify, for as an example, is listening to podcasts, the platform that they have, the way that I've got it set up, the playlists that I have, that I've used for years, helps me to be motivated when I'm doing stuff around the house. I know it's not important, but it's woven into your life,
mm.
and taking an active stand. And then I feel like, oh, if I take an active stand and I use another company, well, they'll probably do something, and then I've got to make another choice. So I feel like there's so many companies. I mean, for example, I boycott Nestle. I have done probably
Mm.
for 15 years, and that's quite hard. Like if I'm also boycotting Amazon and Spotify and Unilever, and like what do I buy and how do I do anything? I'm a
Yeah, because
vegetarian
in
as
the
well.
meantime,
Like
in the
come on,
meantime, you're boycotting these companies
they don't
for,
care.
but the companies that potentially have, better ethical position, they have no incentive whatsoever
Mm.
to stay ethical. Vis-a-vis the bookshop and Spotify conversation. So we understand, as a consumer, we understand the dichotomy between, doing the right thing and getting actually things done in your life.
Yeah,
And we shouldn't feel too bad for that, Emma, because I think everybody's like that. Like,
everyone's a hypocrite. Yeah,
everyone's a hypocrite.
yeah,
Um, but I really do feel like the first to be impacted with all of this is creative people.
yes,
You know, my a good friend is a voiceover actor, and there's been a huge amount of
hmm
AI transitioning to voiceover. I've seen it in my company. I've people are starting to even create digital twins of themselves, and all of that stuff is super super interesting and scary, and is impacting creative jobs, and that's a big problem. That is a really big
yeah,
problem. So yeah,
definitely.
sorry
Mm.
to end on a on a downer. Have we got anything to lift everybody up before we go?
Well, buy direct from your authors and your publishers. Go to your local bookshop. I feel like we say this every week at the
We
moment.
do.
Go to book events, talk to real people in real life, and do real life things. And yeah, if you're a hypocrite, well, we all are. Like it's hard because you do beat yourself up about it a little bit, but you can only do so much, can't you? So I think just try.
I do think it's amazing how the connection between um, business owners, like independent business owners. I'll give you a quick example. I got a new cleaner, and she's wonderful, and she's very young. And so before I left the house, I said, "Oh, you're quite young to be a cleaner. Do you mind me asking what else you're doing?" And she said she was an early years person in a nursery, but she quit that because she kept on getting ill, which is fair point.
Mm.
And she's now starting her own beauty business. And I said, oh, that's really great. It's really great to sort of see a young person have the confidence to start their own business. And she said, oh, I see you obviously have your own business as well. She's obviously seen that I've got framed books on the walls, and there's books everywhere. There's boxes of books. I'm not fancy like Emma. I don't have a storage unit, but there's books everywhere. And we were in a room with said books, and I showed her. I said, "Oh yeah, these are some of my books," and it was just really lovely to have this exchange of these two people who are being entrepreneurial, trying to sort of make something
Mm.
in this world still, and just encouraging each other. It was just really lovely.
Yeah,
And if you're a business owner like us ourselves, who just do feel like you're constantly on the back foot of things, it is valued. It's really, really
yeah,
valued. Keep doing what you're doing and start local and go from there, because the impact that you have is going to be amazing. So yeah, that's what I
yeah.
wanted to share.
So, with all that said, next week we are bringing our AI versions and just scrolling on our phones while AIM and Kirstin host the podcast. Is that?
Can you imagine if we did that? It would be chaotic.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Oh, yeah.
No, the
No, it'll
real
be
Emma
real
and real
us.
Kirsten will be back next week. And I
Yeah.
do want to talk about festivals, book festivals, and we'll leave the other one open to see what else happens this week.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you to everybody who has listened in, watched live, and thank you to everyone who is not listening or watching live, but has listened or watched anyway. Oh my God. I've had a YouTube channel for 8 years, Kirstin. 8 years.
I'm just leaving all the hard stuff for you. Thanks everyone for listening to Emma warble on for 8 years.
Like and
I
subscribe.
love
I
so
don't
much
know.
the
Thanks.
she's the queen. See you next week, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.